Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me on this Friday afternoon in the Locker Room. I'm Alan Locher. As if award-winning actress Tamara Tunie isn't busy enough, this incredibly talented actress just returned from shooting I Want to Dance with Somebody playing Cissy Houston. She's currently starring as Anna in Cowboy Bebop on Netflix, and on Christmas Day, her new film, A Journal for Jordan, will open. The film was directed by Denzel Washington and also stars Michael B. Jordan. Ms. Tamara Tunie is also set to narrate a documentary about the domestic assault on the Capitol complex. The 2-hour documentary, which will air on January 6, 2022 on PBS, will examine the pursuit of democracy within the U.S. and others on the anniversary of the Capitol riot. TV viewers most certainly recognize Tamara for her 21-year role as Dr. Melinda Warner in the hit NBC series Law and Order SVU, and daytime television fans certainly remember her for her long-standing role as Jessica Griffin on the CBS daytime drama As the World Turns, for which she received 2 NAACP Image Award nominations and 2 Soap Opera Digest Award nominations. TV viewers will also recognize her for roles on Sundance TV's The Red Road, AMC's Dietland, Fox's 24, as well as recurring roles and guest appearances on Almost Family, Emergence, Better Call Saul, Blue Bloods, Billions, Alpha House, Elementary, Survivor's Remorse, Zoo, The Good Wife, Law and Order, Sex and the City, and NYPD Blue, to name a very small few. She works nonstop, bringing her incredible talent to the stage, to television, and to film. In June of 2020, in the wake of the killings of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd, Tamara, along with a long list of Broadway stars, is a founding member of Black Theater United. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome Tamara Tunie to the Locker Room. Tamara!
Ooh, I'm exhausted just listening to
I'm
you say all
exhausted.
that.
Exactly. You should
Hello,
be.
Alan. Hello, darling.
You should be.
It's so good to see you.
You too. You too. I mean, it really. I was talking to our mutual friend Jennifer. It is incredible. You just, you know, burst out the door and you work nonstop. Kind of my first question was, what do you do for downtime for yourself?
There is no downtime. Really, there really isn't much downtime. But actually, I'm just really looking forward to the holidays. I'm going to go spend it with my family. As you mentioned, I just finished a film, and right before that film, I was in Toronto for most of the summer shooting Apple TV C. So I rolled from C right into I Want to Dance with Somebody. So I'm really looking forward to just getting together with my family and chilling out in
What was that
in
when you
Maryland.
said you shot in Canada?
Oh, it's called C. It's Apple TV's
Okay.
series. It stars Jason Momoa, and it is another post-apocalyptic world where everyone is blind and sight is considered evil. So it's really it's full of action and political intrigue. So I really like it.
Oh, that sounds fascinating and challenging, to say the least.
Well, it was challenging because I had to play an unsighted person. And so I had to learn how to, navigate the world sightless. And it was when I first went up, which was pre-pandemic, was when I joined the show. I joined the show in season 2. And I shot 2 episodes before the lockdown. And in going up there, I had to go through like a sort of boot camp training on how to navigate the world sight free. And we had an amazing producer consultant who is an unsighted gentleman named Joe, who was just fantastic. And so working with him and the rest of the team on learning how to, just walk through the world, how to respond to people. When we talk to each other, we look at each other and we look in each other's eyes. But when you're not sighted, you don't necessarily do that, and your hearing kind of leads. So it was just learning all these different idiosyncrasies and everything. And it was just really, really emotional after the first 2-hour session that I spent to just kind of slightly comprehend what it must be like to live in a sighted world and be an unsighted person. So it was really an enlightening process for me, and I really just love doing the show.
I bet. Well, that leads me to your process. So, like here, you're playing an unsighted person. You had to play Sissy Houston. What do you normally do when you get that character?
Yes.
Sissy's a little easier to go look and sort of see, or you might know her personally. But like other characters, Dr. Melinda Warner, is a medical examiner. You're not.
Right, right, right. But I grew up in a funeral home, so I was used to dead people.
That's right.
But yeah, so I mean, it's different for
Did that help you?
Well, in a sense, yes, because I grew up in a funeral home, so the morgue was not something that was either foreign to me or in any way frightening. A lot of people find it uncomfortable, the idea even, and and also just having I think I just brought a certain level of like respect and reverence for the dead. I mean, there's a certain, even though my character was very matter of fact, I think that there was a certain level of I don't want to say honoring, but definitely respecting who was either on my table or who I discovered and was doing at a crime scene or whatever. But and also even all the time those were real actors. Are my earrings bouncing off my? Can you hear that?
I
Is that
don't.
good? Good.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay, cool. So, because I was like, all of a sudden I hear tap tap tap. But I mean, just to wrap that up, there are real actors who are playing these deceased characters on the show, and sometimes we would be, out in the street or on a roof in Manhattan in January and it's freezing and and everybody would be working around this poor person who was lying on the ground,
Sad.
and of course our crew and everything would make sure that they were lying on something that was warm, that was hidden or whatever, and look at, but I had a special kind of, look, let's take care of my dead people, I was like, come on, let's shoot this. It's 20 degrees out here. Let's shoot this. Let's get this done so this poor child in a mini skirt can go get warm. You know what I mean? So.
And doesn't end up in the real morgue.
Yeah, really, we don't want that.
But going back, do you have a process?
Yeah, I think I was saying it's different. I think it's different for everything. Like you said, as I was saying, to just understand the world of the character and see, and being a sightless person. I mean, that was one thing. And then on top of that, it was adding, who the person was in this fictional world, this futuristic fictional world, understanding that world. So in preparation for that, I came in season 2, so I wanted to watch season 1, to see what was going on and how people are, moving through this world, and every show has a different style, so understanding that, and then adding my character's, agenda on top of everything else, what I wanted to achieve, who I was, who I was complicit with, who was a friend, who was a foe, blah, 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 all that stuff. So that was that. I mean, and then as you said with Sissy Houston, I mean, Sissy is a living person, right now. Fortunately, Sissy had written a couple of books. One was an autobiography, and then another she wrote after Whitney passed away to just, share her life with Whitney. And so, I had those as resources. And then I found out, well, first of all, when I first moved to New York, Sweetwater's was the club in New York to see, and so I actually saw Sissy Houston at Sweetwater's like in the early 80s, and probably Whitney was singing background, but who knew who she was, right?
Right.
And so there was that kind of connection, and just being around, being in New York, through Whitney's professional journey, and just and having my friends who were dancers dancing in her videos, so so all of that, and then like I said recently, just to prep for the role, reading the books, and then I learned that I actually had really dear friends in the music business who actually worked with Whitney and with Sissy, and so I could talk to them and get their impressions and everything. And then I just try to synthesize what I have, because listen, there's only one Sissy Houston, right? So I just try to synthesize, what I have learned, and put it through, the prism of me, and just to, um, personify the essence of that person, not necessarily be an impersonator of that person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's that. So it's always different. It's always
Was it a fun project?
It was wonderful. It was very emotional. Because like I said, we lived the journey of Whitney Houston, right? We lived it, and so it was very emotional. And then to dig deeper into her story, we all know what we know, and pretty much we know what we're fed, right?
Correct.
What we see in the media, or blah blah blah. And then in reading Sissy's book and getting the more personal story, it was just really emotional. And it's a celebration of her, this film. It's a celebration of her accomplishments, but it's also, sharing the humanity of who she was, with struggles like we all have, So, and the young woman who plays Whitney Houston is extraordinary, and so, and we just had that thing, like, immediately when we met, and we met on Zoom, and we had that thing on, on Zoom. Yeah. So it's like, wow, if we can connect like this on Zoom, So yeah, so I think it's going to be, Casey Lemons is an extraordinary director. The writer, Anthony, oh God, I'm going to say his name wrong because I'm having a brain. Anthony McCartan, I want to say.
Hold on.
He wrote the screenplay for the Freddie Mercury.
The one with Rami Malek.
Yes. Oh, why am I having such?
Anthony McCartan.
Thank you. Anthony McCartan is the writer, and he wrote Bohemian Rhapsody, right?
Yeah.
So he's an extraordinary writer, and so he and Casey as a team, have really. I mean, I think it's just going to be really beautiful, celebratory. Whitney's music is all through it, and it's just going to be incredible. I really think.
That's
so.
Awesome.
I'm honored to be part of it.
I'm excited. I mean, it's still, still hard to believe she's not around.
I know. I can't believe it.
Yeah,
I still can't believe it. Can't believe it.
Still.
And there were those days when, it would just kind of hit all of us at the same time, and it's just like, wow, wow. Mm. I mean, because Whitney Houston was, she was extraordinary. She was extraordinary. And she was gifted. It was a gift. And it was special. And she was special,
I had the opportunity. I worked at Disney, and I think I got the tickets through my job. For a Sting and Trudy Tyler benefit at Carnegie Hall for the Rainforest.
Yes.
Where she sang, I Will Always Love You.
Oof.
In Carnegie Hall, and it was a benefit, and it was truly one of the most incredible things I have ever witnessed.
Wow.
Incredible. I still feel like my body, the chills from her voice.
Right.
Christmas Day, you have a movie opening.
Yes.
You just had the premiere last week.
Yes.
A Journal for Jordan.
Yes.
What can you talk?
Speaking of being somebody else's mother.
Do you play his mom?
No, actually, I play Shantae Adams' character's mom, Dana. Okay. Dana Kennedy, who is the author of the book, A Journal for Jordan, that our movie is based on. And, I had the privilege of talking to Dana about, her mom. And then I actually met her mom at the premiere, which was great. So I play the mother, and, it's a beautiful, beautiful love story. It's a beautiful love story. It's a story of honor, love, integrity, and the premise is, and we know this at the beginning of the film, Michael B. Jordan's character has died. And so he's written this journal. He was a sergeant, I want to say, in the Army. He was he was in Desert Storm and also in Iraq, and he was killed in Iraq. But while he was there, they were expecting this child, and Dana, the character, Dana gave him a journal to just write down messages to his unborn child, not knowing that he would not survive to watch that child grow up, So it's a very beautiful, emotional, gorgeous story. And Denzel Washington, his direction on this is incredible. It's so sensitive, and it's really beautiful, really beautiful.
Wow. I saw Michael and her speak about the movie, and I didn't realize it was a true story. Sounds incredibly powerful.
Yes.
And how smart of her to suggest, and how lucky that child now has that journal.
Absolutely. And that journal, and so at the premiere, because I met Dana before once I was cast, so that I could talk to her, about her experience growing up. She was an Army brat, so her dad, her family was in the service, because military families are in service, not just the person enlisted; it's the entire family, right? And and so that's how she met Charles, the character Charles, who's the father of Jordan, right? So that's how she met Charles, right? And so, in talking to her and, learning about, what was it like being a military kid? What was the dynamic in the family? Is the sergeant the sergeant at home as well as, on the base, And so understanding that dynamic was, really interesting. And so it was, it's really beautiful. And the ironic thing is at the premiere party, nobody knew who I was. Nobody knew that was me playing Penny Kennedy.
Really?
Because they were like, nobody knew it was me. Nobody knew. And I was like, why is nobody saying anything to me about the film?
Did you look that different?
I guess I did, not to me, but...
Oh, that's got to be such a weird experience. You're like, what's happening?
But for me, I'm just
wait, was I in it?
I'm like, mission accomplished, mission accomplished. So.
Yeah. I was going to tell you, James said Pittsburgh loves you.
But I love Pittsburgh.
And I'm going to get to World Turns, but I have to tell you that Mr. Bryce says, Tunie, my sister, love you.
Oh, Scotty B.
Scotty
love
B.
you too. Love you too, brother.
Scotty
See
B
you soon.
Are you said you were going home? You're going to Pittsburgh?
Actually, no, I'm going to Maryland. My nephew, he lives in Maryland, and we gather at his place periodically for Christmas. So, unfortunately, not the entire clan will be there, and we are legion. We're a big family, but not everybody can make it. But a nice portion, I would say, like maybe a third of the family will gather at my nephew TJ's in Maryland. So that's where we'll be.
Very nice. I was going to ask, because I know you grew up in Pittsburgh, and I know Pittsburgh was a big As the World Turns town. Was your family a World Turns watcher before Jessica Griffin made her appearance?
I don't think they were, actually, but I was. I was a World Turns watcher. Yes, I was.
I didn't realize that.
Oh, yes. So I was a big fan of Scott Bryce before I even met him.
Who introduced you to the show?
I was watching it. I started watching it actually when I came to New York. I think because a friend of mine, an actor friend, was doing, had done an episode. So I was like, okay, well, let me watch, so I started watching it. And then I was actually hired on World Turns in a recurring role when David McCullum was on the show playing some evil bad guy. And this was when, oh gosh, I can't remember the character's name, but he was some evil bad guy. And he had these like 3 women, Charlie's Angels kind of henchwomen, and I was like one of his henchwomen. I I wasn't so much the security beat 'em up part, but I was the kind of girl Friday, knew all the secrets part. So I did that for, a few episodes. And then years later, I was cast as Jessica.
It's so funny how many, in doing this show, how so many actors had a little role before they got a big role on the same show.
Exactly.
It's really, really amazing. Before we get to Oakdale, Carnegie Mellon University, can you put into words the experience? Some of your classmates, I'm sure,
Yeah.
I know what a incredible education actors have received at that school, and
Absolutely.
directors, Chris Goutman.
Absolutely. CMU is extraordinary. Actually, I'm a trustee of the school for about a year and a half now, which was an incredible honor to be asked to join the board of trustees. My experience there and education there, I found invaluable. But I would also say I also learned it was only the beginning of my education, because when I came to New York with my BFA, I knew theater, but I didn't know film and TV. You know what I mean? And so I continued my education once I got to New York. I continued to study. I took acting class. I took singing. I took dance. Everything that I had done at CMU, but just building on top of it. And since my tenure at CMU, the program has grown and evolved and has graduated so many incredibly talented, award-winning artists. And I will just have to digress back to A Journal for Jordan, because Shantae Adams, who is the lead, who plays Dana Kennedy in the film, is also a Carnegie Mellon alum. And when I met her before we started filming, the first thing she said to me, she said, I'm such a fan of yours, Miss Tunie. And I'm like, well, I'm a fan of yours because I saw Roxanne, and I saw the photograph where you were the mom. And she's like, oh my God, she's kind of like freaking out a little bit. And she says, but I have to tell you, when I was at CMU and you came to speak, you came to talk to the musical theater kids, like a master class. But I'm musical theater wasn't. I was strictly acting, but I cut my classes so that I could come hear you, work and talk with the kids, because you were the only Black woman alum to return to the school during my tenure there. And what you shared and what you showed me just changed my life. Okay, so then I just like burst into tears, and she burst into tears.
But that's just incredible to be on a film where two
Yes.
people, both
But
women
yet
and two
there
women.
was a third. There was a third. The guy, when you see the film, the guy who plays one of her best friends, she has like 3 best friends. The guy who plays one of her best friends, he was also a Carnegie Mellon alum, and he was actually 2 years ahead of her. So they were at CMU at the same time, and then they were in this movie together at the same time. So the 3 of us were representing CMU.
That's amazing. John just said your first character was named Dana.
My first character where?
On World Turns, before
Oh
Jessica
my goodness.
was Dana.
You're absolutely right, John. How do you know that?
I mean, they know everything. And they just said that David was Maurice Vermel.
Yes, Vermel, the bad guy. Yes.
Yeah.
And he had a yacht. That's all I remember.
Yeah. Well, before we get to Oakdale, I want to talk about Preserving Democracy, Pursuing a More Perfect Union, set to air on the anniversary of the Capitol insurrection. I know that you are politically vocal. How did you become politically active?
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, I would guess, first of all, the example of my mother. My mother was always socially and politically involved, in our community. So she was my example of, we have to participate, right? And so, as an adult, I've always, participated and supported in my community, my local community. voting, voting locally, which is just as important as voting nationally. When the presidential campaigns roll around, they're just not the only ones that we should participate in. We need to participate in every level of government because it impacts us on every level, so that's always been the case, but I would say I became more active. I would say I became more active when President Obama began his first campaign, because 2 years before he announced he was running for the presidency, he was holding a fundraiser in Washington, D.C. for an organization that he had that helped to fund Democratic races, all over the country on every level, state level, etc. And so, he had spoken at the Democratic convention prior, where everybody was like, oh, who is this guy? Who is this guy? He's amazing. Who is this guy? And so, I was invited to come and support this event. So I did. I bought some tickets. I have friends in DC who I said, come on, let's go and meet this guy and hear what he has to say. And so we went, and it was a very small, intimate gathering. It was like maybe 35, 40 people. And so when we met, he was coming through the room. He was saying hello to this person, that person, this person, that, and he was making his way toward our group. And so when he got to our group, I was like, Senator Obama, it's such an honor to meet you. And he was like, well, it's a pleasure to meet you because you are one of my favorite actors. I love you on Law and Order SVU. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Right. So anyway, so he spoke at that time at the event. He spoke about, what his thoughts were on the state of our country, what he was trying to do in Illinois, and what he's trying to do nationally in supporting these other, Democrats around the country. And he was just so charismatic, but also so very, very clear and succinct. And when we left, I said to my friends, he's going to run for president. He's going to be the next president, And so then maybe a year and a half, 2 years later, he announced his candidacy. And so I was like, how can I support, because I was on board. So how can I support? And fortunately, because I was in a position financially to be able to support, on a certain level. So I was able to do that. I was able to garner support, and use my celebrity for good in this way, because he is good, and so so that was when it really kind of kickstarted, I would say, during that first campaign. And so I have been active, in whatever way I can, ever since, and how, in whatever way I can support. If it's just lending my voice, if it's doing a video for somebody, if it's, writing a check, if, whatever way I can do, which will probably lead us to Black Theater United.
Yeah, definitely. Exactly. Go right ahead. Black Theater. I know that came about because of the deaths of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd, to name a very few of the Black folks who have been murdered in our country.
Yes.
And you and a slew of folks came together after George and created Black Theater United. And
as you mentioned in the intro, it was after the murder of George Floyd. I got a phone call from my dear friend LaShawns, and she said that she had been talking with Audra McDonald, and they had been saying to each other, we're seeing all of these statements from different, organizations and stuff after the murder of George Floyd, positioning themselves and saying, we're not going to stand for this. This is outrageous. We're going to finally do something, but we're not hearing anything from the Broadway community. And so she said, so Audra and I were talking, and we thought, maybe we can just come together and do like a video, right? With the Black artists on Broadway, just saying, we stand together against hate or whatever, right? So it was just a little brainstorming session. So they're making phone calls and, kind of gathering the troops, and it's friends to friends, right? And so we were working on, the idea was to do this documentary, but then what started to happen was an organization was starting to form, so it was very grassroots. And so we had to come up with a name and, and become a not-for-profit and really have a mission that's geared toward, in the discrepancy and inequities in the theater world, and also in our nation at large. That's what our organization is looking, to affect. And we've come together to address the inequities in the theater by facilitating a summit of all of the leaders in the industry on Broadway to come together. We spent 6 months meeting, talking about, problems, coming up with solutions, challenging the establishment to, step up and do and enact what you say, let your deeds reflect what you're saying. And, at the end of this 6-month period, we established what we call the New Deal for Broadway that was released, that addresses how the industry was going to change, and open the doors and the opportunities for people who have been excluded for 100 years or whatever. So you can go to our website. Thanks for putting up that up there, because I'm being really inarticulate right now, and I'm sorry.
That's okay. You are not.
It's
you
just
are
been.
not.
I'm like half of my brain is still in Whitney Houston world, but yes, you can go to our website. The New Deal is posted there, to get any information that you want, and all the other things, And prior to that, I mean, we have just been, how can we support change in our country? And we did a music video called Stand for Change that Vanessa Williams really, led the charge on and co-produced the video that said, that basically was a song that said, if you want to be the change, if you want to change, then be the change, basically, right? So let's all stand together. And, prior to that, we really participated in getting people out to vote with different videos, that said vote, and nonpartisan, it's just like, get out and vote, just get out and vote. We're not telling you who to vote for, just, get out and vote, so
use your voice.
Use your voice, and there's power in your voice. And as a matter of fact, that was the census was another issue, that is incredibly important. And we had a series of videos that said, you are important, you count, be counted, fill out the census. So, so we're, our goal is to, in whatever way we can, be a part of the change that this country must. Absolutely must.
I mean,
must do.
Yes, 100%. Bravo for getting a group like that together to do that, and all of you with incredible, strong voices. And I'm not talking singing and act, strong,
Absolutely. I'm
strong,
very honored to be, a part of this collection of incredibly passionate, dedicated people who are just as passionate about home and community and state and nation as they are about performing in a Broadway show. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah.
Alex Rolsvig from World Turn says hello. She said her and her son are loving Cowboy Bebop.
Oh, Cowboy Bebop!
I'm enjoying. I'm about halfway through. Very much am enjoying it.
Oh, good, good, good. Yes, Cowboy Bebop on Netflix.
Yeah.
That I love doing that show. We shot that in New Zealand, so I was actually in New Zealand.
Oh, is that what you were in New
Yeah,
Zealand? Yeah.
October, November,
Yeah.
yeah, of last year. So that's what we were doing over there. And I was so excited for it to land, and it's really good. I mean, I'm proud of it. I was so happy to be a part of it. It was very different for me, something really different. And sadly, I learned while I was at the premiere of Journal for Jordan, my agent pulled me aside and said, "Listen, I have to tell you this before you hit the red carpet, but they've canceled season 2 of Cowboy Bebop." And
I
I'm
was
like,
bummed
"What?"
to read. I was bummed to read that as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That broke my heart. We were all a little stunned and shocked. But that's how it goes. So I'm
Yeah.
like, well, maybe somebody else will pick it up. We always hope for that. Never happens, but you never know.
Yeah. Can't never say never. For
Never say
sure.
never. That's right, Alan.
So we have to talk about your incredible run as Jessica Griffin on As the World Turns. You had that little part as Dana. How did the role of Jessica come about? Did you have to audition?
I did audition actually. And it's interesting because I think when I did Dana, I think it was a different head writer. And so at this point, Doug Marlin had come on to the show. And so I auditioned for Jessica, and the character was going to recur. And so I went in and read for it, and I got it, and did 2 episodes. And then they called my agent and said, we want to put her on contract. So that was unexpected. And I was like, great, great.
As a fan, you must have been very excited.
I was very excited because I knew almost everybody. So it was like, I'm joining the family. So yeah, I came on contract, and in the contract it stated for the first 6 months, you couldn't do any other work outside the soap. You could only just focus on the soap, couldn't do anything else. Well, 3 months in, I got the movie Wall Street. I was offered the role on the movie Wall Street. And so I went to Doug Marlin and Robert Calhoun, who was the executive producer at the time, and said, I'm offered this Oliver Stone movie. I know with the contract. And they were like, "Oh yeah, we'll write around you. Don't worry about it. Yes, you can do it. We'll write around you." And I was like, "What?" And so that became basically like the MO, if you will, for my career, because As the World Turns afforded me the ability to do films, to do theater, and to do primetime television while I was on the show. And let me just add this. When I joined the show and met Larry Brigman, and saw Larry Brigman, first of all, who's just one of the finest actors I know, and saw him navigating Broadway theater and movies and doing the soap and everything. And I was just like, I want to do what he's doing. You know what I mean? And so because Douglas was a former actor, Robert Calhoun was from the theater, director, blah, 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 blah. They understood actors on a level that I don't think a lot of other people did. And somehow they understood that happy actors would never leave, and so we didn't, because we were still able to do and exercise these other muscles and then bring all that juiciness that we just did over here, bring it back into the show, which I think was incredibly smart. So and that's how people are always like, well, how were you able to do all this stuff? And that's why, because of Doug Marlin and Bob Calhoun.
Well, speaking of Doug, who created Jessica and created Iva Snyder, what do you remember about Lisa Brown?
Oh my gosh. Downtown Lisa Brown. That was my nickname for her. Every time I see her, I'd be like, Downtown Lisa Brown. And she'd be like, Uptown Tunie, It's so great. Lisa was one of a kind. She's one of a kind, and she I mean, I just loved her, and I loved working with her, and I loved her work ethic, and I loved her passion, and she was just incredibly special, and it really made me incredibly sad to hear that she had passed away. I mean, I was shocked because I did not know that she was struggling with anything, so it was really shocking and incredibly sad, and I know she'll be missed. Terribly missed, and my heart and love goes out to her family.
100%. So as a fan, was there someone or a few people who Tamara Tunie was excited to first meet when she arrived in Oakdale?
Oh, wow. Well, let me think for a minute. Eileen Fulton, of course. I mean, that group, Don Hastings, that group, Kathy Hughes, that group, of course. And I'm trying to think.
I love you just combined her real name and her character name. Kathy Hughes, Kim Hughes, Kathy Hayes.
Kathy Hayes, Kim Hughes. Right. That group. And then I'm trying to remember who was there. Well, there was the Tom and Margot.
At the time was
Hillary Bailey Smith.
Yeah.
And Justin.
Yeah.
So they were there when I got there. So I was very excited to meet them. But I will say this, when they recast, particularly when they recast Tom.
No, Tom.
No, when they recast Tom with Scott Holmes, when Scott Holmes came on, and he came on after me, when Scott Holmes came on, I just went up to him and I was like, I'm Tamara Tunie. It's so nice to meet you. And I just want to say, The Rink was one of my favorite shows. And when you sang Blue Crystal, I started crying. And he was like, oh my God, you remember that? So and Tom, Scott Holmes has just one of the most beautiful voices in the world.
I love it.
So it was great to meet, so many folks. And listen, I was watching Martha Byrne, as a child, so coming on and meeting her.
When you got there, it was Greg Marks, right? Not just
it was Greg Marks who was there. It was Greg Marks and Hillary Bailey, and then of course Ellen Dolan came in and replaced Hillary, and Ellen and I are still dear friends to this day.
You and her were phenomenal. One of the fans just said, was Barbara your first client? And no, I think it was Kim Hughes was your first. You were hired to defend her murder trial, I think.
That is correct, because she murdered
Doug Cummings.
Doug Cummings, who was played by
John Wesley Shipp.
Okay, so let's back up. So John Wesley Shipp and I did an industrial together, right? In San Diego for some company. I can't remember what it was. And soon after that, he was hired on As the World Turns to play Doug Cummings. And I don't know this for a fact, but I do think that when I auditioned for Jessica, I think John Wesley Shipp might have put in a good word for me. I think he might have.
Lisa Brown and John Wesley were huge on Guiding Light together for under Doug's writing.
Oh, well, there you go. There you go. So that's right. I came in to prosecute.
Oh, was it to prosecute Kim? Yeah, it could have been. I don't remember.
No. It was to defend. Wait. Okay. No, I came in.
I think I read it was defend. I could be wrong.
It was defend because Greg Marks was leaving, right? And I was coming in to sit in his seat.
Oh.
So that's what it was. Yes. And then when Tom Hughes came back, he came back in the body of Scott Holmes.
And today is your on-screen daughter's birthday, Napiera.
Danny girl, happy birthday, Danny girl. Yes, Napiera.
So, I wanted to read you this from a fan, Corey. He said, what can I say about an actress who had the weight of being one of the few residents of color in Oakdale? Jessica was portrayed as regal, intelligent, empathetic, and a moral tentpole for the show. Ms. Tunie was the portrait of dignity and grace in a time where there was limited depictions of color on television. I want to thank her for inspiring others with such a rich tapestry of characters.
Wow, you're gonna make me cry. That was beautiful.
It's
Thank you.
it's true though. At that time, there weren't many, and then to have an interracial marriage on daytime
Yes.
television.
Yes, indeed. And that was the first. And I really commend and admire the way Doug Marlin chose to integrate this.
Speaking of,
Ah, oh my God. And there's Ellen, and there's Scott, and there's Iona Morris, who is my sister from another mother to this day, and Michael Janae, who is my brother
and I
from
think
another
it's
mother
Lauryn
to this day.
Hill too.
And the
Lauren,
and the beautiful, fabulous Lauryn Hill, who sang at our wedding.
yeah.
And it was the first time America heard Lauryn Hill sing. And I have to say, I'll take credit for that. Because Lauren, I would hear her, and here's this 13, 14-year-old, and I would hear her in her dressing room singing, and she would share her spoken word with me, da 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 da. And so I went to the music department. I went to Jill Diamond, who was our musical supervisor at the time, and I said, Lauren should sing at Jessica's wedding. I was like, she's got a beautiful voice, and so she should sing at the wedding. And so they said, yes, she should. And so she did. And it was the first time, because this was before the Fugees and blah, blah, blah. And so it was the first time America heard Lauryn Hill sing, and it was gorgeous. It was beautiful. So
good
super
job
special.
on that.
Super special. Super special.
On that one. Was there someone who took you under their wing when you first got there?
No.
And
No.
Did you feel the impact of being one of the few Black people in daytime and on, a show like that?
The only time that I would really, feel it, to articulate it, was when I would be talking to Doug, right? And we would get mail from fans. Particularly, I remember one particular occasion. Oh, and it was when Jessica and Duncan got together, right? And I think there were some letters that said, so Jessica, she was with Roy, and then she was with, I can't remember.
Dr. Ben?
No, it was before Dr. Ben. This is all before Dr. Ben. Dr. Ben was after Duncan.
Yeah.
But it was it was Roy, and then it was Peter Francis James played a character whose name I can't remember.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah.
Yes.
So and so those relationships didn't work out, and so now she's with the white dude. But that's gonna, so why is it that?
Great question. Right. And why does that work out?
Yeah. And so Doug comes to me and says, we're getting these letters, and I just want to get your sense. And I was like, look, Doug, I said, here's the thing. I said, when you only have one Black character on your show, then everything falls on that character. Everything is through the prism of that character. That's the only story that's being told. So basically, in this light, we are saying that, the two relationships with the Black guys failed, but the relationship with the white guy is successful. And that's what we're saying. I was like, so we have to, look at that and acknowledge that, and then perhaps bring some other Black people onto the show to show different, relationships, different circumstances, different points of view, different. You know what I mean? So it was in those kinds of situations that I was really, feeling if there was any kind of, not pressure, but just, we're under a microscope here, and there are many different stories in the Black community, right?
Right.
But we only got one, you know what I mean? So it was, it was.
Blake Stevens, Peter Francis James.
That's Blake. That's who it was. Yeah. Blake. That's right.
What do you remember about each of those men? Count Stovall, Michael Swan, Peter Paros.
Yes, Dr. Ben. They were all great. I mean, I love working with every single one of them, all different, and love working with every single one of them.
all
great.
different. I mean, really, they
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
were. One of the fans asked, and I have no memory, why was Andy Dixon such a prominent? He was in your wedding party up on the Scott DeFreitas. I couldn't tell you. I couldn't remember.
I'm trying to think, and what I think I remember is he was actually like good friends with Lauryn Hill's character. I want to say,
Might be.
I think so. I think so. I think so. For some reason, like, did he work at the like center or something?
Oh, maybe.
Because she was a runaway.
Yep, she was a runaway. She was with Nancy. Nancy was teaching her to read.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes.
Nancy was teaching her to read. Do you have a
Yes.
favorite story there?
A favorite story for
Storyline.
Oh, wow. I don't know. I mean, I don't have a favorite. They're all good and juicy, and I was lucky. And what I was going to say earlier, what I loved about how Doug dealt with the relationship with Duncan and Jessica was, it was not sensationalized. There was no like cross burning on the front lawn or
Right.
epitaphs, spray painted on the side of their house or bricks being thrown through the window. It was with the people, their nearest and dearest and closest friends, who were, when presented with this interracial relationship, suddenly found their own biases and
that was the magic
subtle
of Doug.
racisms, coming to the surface. And I thought that was genius.
That's the magic of Doug, for sure.
Yeah.
You were correct. Miguel says Andy helped out at the Earl Mitchell Center.
Earl Mitchell Center.
Marley Granger. Right?
Marley. Yes, the Earl Mitchell Center. That's right. Yeah. And that's where Lauren had come and Nancy was teaching and that. Excellent. Wow. It's a lot of memories.
It does. When you look back on that time, what comes immediately to mind?
I spent 15 years on that show, right? I was there for 8 in the beginning. I was gone for 5, and then I was back for 7 more. And the 7, was supposed to be 2 weeks, and it turned into 7 years, and again, right. And that was under Goutman's leadership. And again, Goutman provided me the opportunities to be able to come and go and, and participate fully, and so, that's a big chunk of my adult life and my career, and I pride myself on having spent that much time on As the World Turns, because I feel like As the World Turns was really unique of the soaps. It was different. The culture was different. The environment was different. It just was.
Yeah. One of the fans brought up, Eileen's character had trouble with Duncan. I remember that with Duncan and Jessica at the beginning.
Absolutely. And yes.
Eileen's what are your memories of Miss Eileen?
Love and light. Love and light. That is all love and light. Champagne. She just reminds me of champagne.
Champagne. That's perfection.
Yes.
So I believe you signed on to play Dr. Melinda Warner in 2000.
That sounds right.
21 year, another character for 21 years. Could you have ever? Did you? Well, Law and Order shows normally last.
Actually, it was 99. It was 1999. Wow. It was 1999 when I first showed up, and again. That was one episode, possibly recurring, right? And so I recurred, and then I was a regular for like 7 seasons, maybe. And then I recurred. So 22 seasons, because this is season 23, and I came in the second season, right? 22 seasons of that show. No, I never thought. First of all, there was no show that had ever been on television for 23 seasons, and then to be a part of it, has just been great. And in recent years, Warner's not around so much, but I was so happy to, rejoin the cast for the 500th episode, this past fall, at 500 shows. It's just amazing.
You don't really see that in primetime television. We see that in daytime, but 500
Right.
shows,
Right.
is not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in daytime, we're doing a different show every single day.
Yeah.
Right. With no, no summer off, no hiatus. Right.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
265 a year or some crazy, thing like that. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it's
Oh,
something.
yeah.
Courtney was asking, can you talk about working with Chris and Mariska on SVU?
Oh, sure. A ball, just a ball, you know. Um, Christopher and I actually became, good friends offset. So we see each other all the time. As a matter of fact, I'm going to see him again like tomorrow evening. We're getting together. But yeah, and Mariska, I don't see so much, but when I'm there, it's good times, just good times.
I mean, here you are, a working actress living in New York City and working on the streets of New York City. Is that, just a dream?
My career is far beyond anything I could have ever imagined. I came to New York, straight out of CMU with my musical theater degree in hand, to pursue, a Broadway career. I knew that I wanted to do film and television, but really didn't know, how to make that happen. So kind of learned on the job, figuring it out, having an agent who could help, guide and put me up for things and blah, blah, blah. And I will say this, I learned how to act for the camera by doing As the World Turns. I learned how to act for the camera. Now it's different, right? Because it's 3-camera thing, blah, blah, blah. But I learned the subtleties, of camera work because I was trained in the theater, right? And
Mm-hmm.
in the theater, you're trained to, send it to the last row in the balcony, right? And in camera work, it's so much more intimate, So I really learned that. And I just wanted to work as an actor. I just wanted to be able to support myself and live a comfortable life. That was my goal. So everything above and beyond that has been a gift and gravy. And I continue to be surprised by what's being presented to me, both film, television, and theater. And I'm constantly inspired and constantly grateful and in awe of this journey that I've been gifted to have. Um, yeah, it's above and beyond
I can
anything
I
this little
continue to
girl
hear.
from
Yeah.
Homestead could even even think of. I just wanted to sing and dance.
And I hear a lot of people say gratitude is the best way to live life because it continues to bring you happiness. Or I've heard people just talk about, a lot of people have a gratitude journal.
Ah, that's
Yeah.
such a good idea, because oftentimes we get caught up in the have not
Mm-hmm.
and not in the have, and if you write down the things that you have in your life, you'll see that they far outweigh what you don't have, you know.
You mentioned, like what you learned at World Turns. I mean, you have worked with an array of talent. If I don't know if you really could name one person. Is there somebody you think along the way you've learned the most from?
Lena Horne.
And I was going to ask, and that was your Broadway debut,
Yes, it
correct?
was. Yes, it was. That was my first Broadway show. I had been in New York maybe 4 months.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, get out.
Yeah.
4 months.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew your Broadway debut was with her, but I didn't realize you were in New York for 4 months.
Yes. And
Wow.
and here's the thing. Here's the crazy thing. So, I got to New York in September and I was auditioning for this, that, and the other. And so I was booking because it was, musical stuff. And so I was booking some stuff. And so I booked the Christmas show at Rockefeller Center, right?
Mm-hmm.
But before that started, or I even got the contract, I auditioned for Kiss Me Kate that was going to be at a theater in Massachusetts. In Massachusetts, I think. And it was a bigger role. So I said, okay, I'm not going to do Radio City, and I'm going to do this because it's a meteor role and blah, blah, blah. So I go to Massachusetts to do this show at Coach Light Dinner Theater. That's the name, Coach Light Dinner Theater. And we open the show, and the next morning, so this is December, the next morning I wake up and my tonsils have abscessed and my throat is closed and I can barely swallow.
Oh, no.
Right. So long story short, I had to leave the show. They had to replace me. I came back to New York, sad, and my survival jobs were always office work. I would do temp work as opposed to wait tables because, 7th grade typing class, I could type.
Me too, girl. Best thing my mother ever made me take.
Okay, because you never know, right? So I could go into an office and not, wait tables, and I could, and they knew that these are actors who are coming in, so they're like, on the lunch break, she's going to go audition, so we're going to give her a little extra time or whatever, right? And so I was working at this office. This financial company, Cooper's Lybrand, I think it was. And so I was working there as a temp, and I was the secretary, and there was this guy who worked for the company. And we would just chat, he would come by and we'd chat and we chat and we chat. And so one day he came by and he said, listen, my father is Lena Horne's manager, and they're doing some replacements of the singer dancers in her show. So maybe you might want to have your agent look into that. And so I was like, oh, okay. So I did, I called my agent, Lena Horne, blah, blah. They're like, okay, yeah, we're gonna. So I go and I audition for it, and I get it. And, and then working with Lena and just watching her, because for those of you who never saw the show or listened to the album, it's Lena Horne for 2.5 hours, right? And the background singers, there were three of us, 2 women and 1 guy. We would do 10 minutes at the beginning of the show, and then we would, drink champagne and have lunch and brunch while Lena was working her butt off. And then at the end of the show, we would come and do some oohs and ahs in the finale, right? And that was the gig, right? And I was like, this is the best gig. But I would stand in the wings and watch her. And, she would give 200%, like every single performance. And she never missed a show. Now, with that contract, it was 6 shows a week because she didn't do matinees. And, understandably so. So it was 6 shows a week. And so I would watch her every single performance. And I was, and we were also, it was drilled into us. If Lena's not missing the show, you're not missing the show. You know what I mean? So there was a certain work ethic that, was added on to the work ethic I already had from the discipline of going to Carnegie Mellon, a conservatory school, from growing up in a blue collar steel town where the work ethic was very clear and blah, 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 blah. So all of that. And then having Lena like just kind of, put the icing on the cake for me, just really established my trajectory as far as work is concerned.
Like right out of the gate, 4 months into New York City. I mean, and to watch that every day for 6 shows, that's an education right there.
It truly was. It truly was.
Wow.
And she was just wonderful. She was just wonderful. And she loved me and I loved her, and her dresser, at one point said to me, she's like, I think Lena sees herself in you. I think Lena sees her younger self in you. And I was just like, oh, okay. Ooh, that's a lot, but okay.
That's a compliment. That's a compliment.
Big time.
Jill was asking, you produced a documentary called The Passing On, right?
Yes.
Has that been released, she was asking?
I don't think it's been released yet. I know it's been doing a lot of festivals and that sort of thing. And for those who don't know, Passing On is a documentary about the Black funeral home business and I don't want to say demise of, but how important that business is in the community. And when that business it leaves the community, the impact that it has on the community. And when that business is not supported, a lot of Black funeral homes are being bought up by corporations, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's just really looking at, the cultural importance of the Black funeral home. And having grown up in a Black funeral home, when I was approached to come on board and help it out, I was like, of course, yeah, whatever I can do.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. It's really interesting.
My last question, Jonathan Reiner, who used to work at Soap Opera Weekly, asked, what do you recall about the 2001 Dreamgirls concert for the Actors Fund? He says you were part of an incredible history.
Yes. What I most remember, is it Jonathan?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. What I most remember, Jonathan, is after Brian Stokes Mitchell, because it was an Actors Fund benefit, right? After Brian Stokes Mitchell introduced the fire chief from the local fire department on 8th Avenue there in the theater district, and he spoke. And you may recall this was right after 9/11.
Yeah.
And then Brian said, on with the show. And then that cowbell hits at the top of Dreamgirls, bop, 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 bop. The roar that went up in the audience. I mean, to this day, I still get goosebumps. The roar. And I was up in the dressing room because, I play Michelle. I don't show up till the end of the first act. So I'm up in the dressing room. And the roar that I heard come through the speaker, I was just like, oh my God. I was almost terrified to come out on stage, And so that's the thing I most remember. I most remember the roar
and I
of that
and I love that you just moved. Can you move one more time, everybody, to show your God Save the Queen? I love
this was a gift. So I did this show, Black Earth Rising, that's on Netflix, and it was a BBC Netflix partnership. And so I spent 5 weeks in London filming. It filmed in London, France, and Ghana. And so my part was in London and Ghana. So I spent like 5 weeks or so in London, and I met some friends of friends who now have become my friends. They're my sisters, and we've been Zooming from across. When I was in New Zealand, we were Zooming. It was like, well, what time is it in London if I'm in New Zealand, And so
that's like complete. I mean,
it's crazy.
Yeah.
So one of my girlfriends, when I had finished my tenure in London, she presented me with that, and so I love it. I think it's really precious.
I love it. I love you. Thank you for doing this. What is next? Do you know what your next, where you'll be off to after the holidays?
I'll be in New York, hopefully. I spent pretty much the last 6 months of this year not in New York, and I've missed it. So I'm really hoping to be in New York for a while. So I'm hoping to get a job that'll be in New York.
there you go.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and I'm really looking forward to, getting back into the theater on the stage. I'm directing some things that are in development. I'll share that with the fans. I am directing this Dorothy Dandridge musical that we're developing, and another musical called Love and Southern Discomfort. That's more of a family melodrama. So
the name's fabulous.
Yeah, and so we've had to kind of not slow down, but the process has been slowed down because of the pandemic, because we can't get together. And then just as we start thinking that theater is back and we can start doing these things again, then Oberon shows up. I'm just whoever. It's like now there's another. So
we've got a rough couple.
Yeah, we're not out
ahead.
Of the woods. We're not out of the woods.
Really, everybody, please get boosted if you have not. I have friends who just tested positive, and they are vaccinated and boosted. So
it's happening. And here's the thing, because I was in New Zealand, right? And when I was in New Zealand in October, November of last year, when it was raging over here, there was no COVID in New Zealand because they masked and they isolated until it was gone. And so, we still think that, okay, I've been vaccinated, I've been boosted, I don't have to wear a mask anymore. And it's like, no, but you do. But you do, because it doesn't stop the spread of it. You know,
Mhm.
the effects may not be as bad, but it doesn't stop the spread of it. So, I don't know, whatever you feel about the vaccine, that's your personal business. But I do know that masks work, because I was in New Zealand and it worked, So I'll just say
We'll
that.
leave it there because I agree. Absolutely. Because it's just horrible, You don't want to see
Yeah.
anybody, and it's the holidays to
No.
all these people testing we may not see our family because the kids just were my niece and nephews were exposed in school.
At school,
So,
yeah. Yeah. I've
but we
heard
have
of
to be careful.
another person that I work with, their
No,
school. Yeah,
got
they've
to be
shut down the
careful.
school earlier than they had intended because some cases popped up. So, yeah.
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 Well, my dear, so good to see you. Thank
So
you
good to
so
see
much.
you.
Thank you so much for doing this. You
It
made
was
my
my
day. I know
pleasure,
you made
Alan.
all of their day as well. Have a
Oh,
wonderful
yay.
holiday.
Thank you. You too.
Bye,
You
my
too.
dear.
Bye,
Take
darling. So
care.
good to see you.
You
Bye,
too.
everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Tamara Tunie, for stopping by. Don't forget, A Journal for Jordan opens Christmas Day, and the PBS documentary that Tamara will narrate airs on January 6th. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, turn on the notifications for reminders of all upcoming shows. Tune in on Tuesday, December 21st, when Eileen Davidson stops by to catch up. Have a great weekend, everybody, and please, please, please stay safe.